Hello, and welcome to So You Think You Can Rule Persia, the podcast where we rate and review all the kings of Persia from Antiochus to Yazdegerd III. I'm Serial, and my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Umberto, and my pronouns are he, him. Hello, and welcome to episode 29, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Which is going to be a fun one, and probably some of you in the audience will have heard of him, because he is the Antiochus that's important for Hanukkah. Oh. And I will go into it when we get there. But
okay,
yeah.
Let me get my...
He's the bad guy of Hanukkah.
Oh, the villain of Hanukkah, I see.
Yes.
Hanukkah's Grinch.
Pretty much.
I'm so sorry. Maybe I should think about what I'm saying before I say it.
It'll be fine. It'll work out in the end. I mean, the last that we saw of this Antiochus, he had murdered a child for being no longer useful, so that sets the vibe.
Right. Oh, God. I just remembered what happened on last episode. I'm sure we're going to do a bit of a rundown just so I can remember, but I have here a bit of a family tree with a lot of things going on, and last episode was very weird because it was just a child, and we talked more about other people than about the child, and then the child was murdered pretty much immediately, and I was like, well, that was that, I guess.
That's how a lot of child kings end up. Don't leave your kingdom to a child, please. Leave it to literally anyone else. They will do a better job.
So what is this Antiochus called?
Epiphanes.
Epiphanes? Like epiphany?
It is the same root of the word epiphany, yes.
Oh, if only I knew what that meant, because I have no idea.
Epiphany is the manifestation, and Epiphanes is he who is manifested, and subtitle, manifested to be a god.
Epiphanes, okay.
Yes, so we'll find out how he gets that.
Interesting.
Why, and if
yes, because he was Mithridates.
Yes, that was his pre-king name. We can start with a quick recap of what happened in the last few episodes, and then we can jump right in to Antiochus IV.
I'm ready.
Well, so what happened recently? We have that Antiochus III basically restored the empire, but then unfortunately tripped up just at the end due to Rome. Damn you, Rome, as usual.
God. I have not recovered from that. It was so sad.
It was very sad. Well, get ready for this episode. But anyway...
Great.
After Antiochus III was killed, Seleucus IV became king. He sort of stabilized the empire, tried to hold things together, but didn't get to do too much. And then he was poisoned by an advisor, supposedly, and succeeded by his child, called Antiochus the Child. And Antiochus the Child ruled for a full month and a bit, during which our Antiochus IV basically marched at the head of a Pergamese army all the way to Antioch and made himself king, adopted Antiochus the Child, and then had him murdered as soon as he had his own child, Antiochus V.
Right. That was why. First he was like, oh, I will be regent, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, I'll be king, but I will make Antiochus the Child like the heir. And then he had his own child. And then he was like, well...
one child too many. So, yes. Also, he had a child with his sister, I will remind you.
Well, we've been, his sister who has married 3 brothers at this point.
Antiochus the Child was also a child of Laodicea and her brother. Yeah. It's not great. Laodicea has a terrible time.
Yeah. God.
But let's get into this new guy and see what happens. So, Antiochus IV is born as the son of Antiochus III sometime around 215, so thereabouts based on his age, and he had the name Mithridates, which I thought was weirdly Iranian for a Seleucid king, because they tend to have these intensely Hellenic names. But then I looked up his family tree, and it turns out that Antiochus IV's grandfather was called Mithridates and was the king of Pontus. So, okay, that makes sense. The kings of Pontus were descended from Achaemenid nobles. The whole naming scheme works out. So, good. So little Antiochus grows up in the royal court as the son of Antiochus the Great. Things are going wonderful. But then there comes the Battle of Magnesia, when our Antiochus is about 18 years old, and his father is defeated by the Romans, And the Romans decide, we want one of your children as a hostage. This one will do. We'll keep the youngest one. Thank you very much. And so Antiochus is 18 years old, bright and young, and shipped off to Rome to live his life as a hostage. Hooray. Yeah, then he spends about 13 years in Rome, where we don't really know much about what was going on. We don't know much about his life there, but it seems that he was probably treated quite well and made contact with a lot of the local nobility in Rome, important senators, different dignitaries from around the Mediterranean, so seems to have had a comfortable enough life without too much stress. Except that, he could have been killed in case anybody in the Seleucid Empire stepped out of line, but, well,
He was a hostage, in a way.
Yeah, but it was a nice hostage.
Leverage.
Yeah.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, then they exchanged him from Demetrius, right?
Exactly. So yeah, in 176, 13 years after he first arrived in Rome, he is replaced with his nephew Demetrius,
right,
who is the son of Seleucus IV and elder brother of Antiochus the Child.
Yeah.
And Antiochus IV is free to go where he likes, and he decides to just stay in Athens for a while and chill out there. Because, well, he could go to the empire, but that sounds like work, so let's just stay in Athens. It's a nice enough place. Sounds good. But then a year later, he receives a letter. It says, Seleucus IV has died / was poisoned.
Oh, whoops.
And now a baby is in charge of the empire. And you are the only adult Seleucid left. What are you going to do? Well, he decides that he would very much like to have the throne, so he makes his own preparations.
He didn't really want more work, but if this opportunity pops up...
Yeah, if he can become king, well, he could delegate. That'll be fine. So what he does is he makes an alliance with the king of Pergamon, who was looking for a friendly Seleucid king to make sure his kingdom was secure. And so Antiochus has a Pergamese army with some mercenaries, and he heads over to Antioch, where he besieges the city, but they immediately give up the regent, and lo and behold, Antiochus enters the great city of Antioch, makes himself king, and deposes the young baby. In the meantime, he marries his sister Laodike, because sure, why not?
Because that's how we roll here.
Yup. Oh, and also he executes the minister Heliodorus, who was the previous regent and accused of poisoning Seleucus
right,
IV.
I remember that. Heliodorus.
Yeah, Heliodorus, who was also chased away by angels from Jerusalem.
Oh, yeah.
He is fun. We have good times here. What happens now that Antiochus IV is king? Well, the first 5 years are pretty uneventful. He's basically just in Antioch, administering the empire without anything fancy happening. And what happens at the end of these 5 years is that he has a child with his sister called Antiochus, because everyone's called Antiochus now.
Yeah, because we don't want to make it easy for historians,
No, too easy. So this is Antiochus V, and Antiochus IV, our protagonist, decides that, well, baby Antiochus needs to disappear so we don't have as many people named Antiochus in the same room. So he has the child killed.
Well, whose fault is that?
It's everyone's fault. Everybody has failed in the naming department. Also, in these first years, maybe due to Antiochus' upbringing in Rome, the Senate sends a delegation to Antioch to talk to the new king and see, okay, what's he going to be like? Is he going to be friendly to us, unfriendly? What's going? And it seems like they're pretty happy with how things are going. They have a conversation, everything goes well. Antiochus sends his own messenger to Rome. What do you think the messenger was called?
Roger?
Okay, cool. Roger.
You know, that it's a long line of messengers. I don't know why you're asking me this, as if we didn't know already.
It's the only messenger has ever lived, yes.
Well, there are some jobs that require you to have a dynasty and a legacy. One of them is monarch, one of them is messenger.
Yeah, sounds fair.
Unless Roger is only Roman messengers.
Yes. Do we have a different name?
We need to find the opposing force to the Roger Empire.
Yes, somebody who is constantly embattled with Roger from the beginning to the end.
How about Jessica?
I like Jessica.
Jessica. Okay, good.
Okay, cool. Jessica. So, Jessica heads over to the Senate and presents a big honkin' pile of cash from Antiochus. And a piece of paper saying, "Hey, can we be friends? I don't want to fight you, please. I have other things to deal with. Is it okay if we reinstate the treaty that we had under Antiochus III?" And the Senate says, okay, sounds fair enough. We don't want to mess other things too much. We are planning a war on Macedon, so we probably just want to make sure we're reasonably at peace. So that works well.
Nice.
But we need to go to another land, mainly known for its inbreeding.
Oh.
The Ptolemaic Empire.
Jolly. Love that.
Because there has been a lot of chaos there recently. In Egypt, the new pharaoh Ptolemy VI has been recently enthroned after a long regency. And as diplomacy would suggest, Antiochus sends an emissary to sort of give his thanks and say, "Congratulations on becoming king. Good job. Nice."
La-di-da.
The problem is that while the courtier was very noble, so a compliment, that's a good sign, this guy had been the governor of Palestine, which is a territory that the Ptolemies claim as part of their empire. So it's not a great move. It's sort of unclear if Antiochus means this as an insult of saying, "Ha ha, we have Palestine and you don't, na 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 na." Or if he just didn't think about it and said, "Oh no, this is a noble guy, I'm giving him a compliment." Who knows? It's kind of sketchy, and in Egypt, people start to mumble that they'd like to have Palestine back, and well, if the Romans managed to defeat the Seleucids, why can't they? So plans are being drawn up. We see how it goes. But now we come to the bit that you may have heard of, which is Antiochus going south into the new province of Judea, where he comes into contact with the local Jewish population. So, how were things going there? Well, before, under the Ptolemies, the Jewish people were basically left to do whatever, because the Ptolemies didn't care about them, they didn't care about the Ptolemies. As long as the taxes arrive on time, whatever. You're never going to be in the administration, who cares? But under the Seleucids, under the new management, as happens in the rest of the empire, there is an encouragement to Hellenize. There's an encouragement to, become more Greek, and then if you are a certain level of Greek, cool, you can enter the administration, you can rise through the ranks, you can become as important as you like.
How the turntables. How now the Seleucid Empire is like, Greek? Yeah, we want to do that. What?
Pretty much.
How did we get here? Damn it, Mithridates.
Yeah,
Being in Athens for so long.
Yeah, but,
Is it because of Antiochus IV? Is it because of Mithridates?
It's just in general because the Seleucids were very Hellenistic.
I mean, yeah, they came from, Macedonia adjacent.
Yeah, they're Macedonian descendants, so the general policy for their administration is that you can keep your local customs, but if you want to enter into the government and self-rule, which is nice for regionalism, but then you need to be able to have a certain level of Hellenization whereby the royal court that is fully Hellenic can interface with you and you can interface with the local population.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice, but causes a bit of a problem in Judea especially, because we have 3 different parties forming. There's one party, which is the Hellenizers, where they say, hey, listen, the new boss wants us to be more Hellenic, so why don't we just change our customs a little bit so that we can work better in this new government, work better in this new society, and ensure that everything is fine. Counteracting them are the Zealots, which are entirely opposed to this idea. The Zealots think, what do you mean we need to try and become more Hellenistic? These people are ruling over us, and we have a whole holy book with all these special instructions on what we have to do. It's all written there explicitly. God told us. What do you mean we need to be more Greek? So that's the second party. Party number 3 is, I honestly don't care. Just please don't burn my farm. I need to feed my children. Do whatever, guys. Which is an understandable position. So Antiochus marches through and arrives to Jerusalem in the middle of all this argument. He finds out that there is basically a competition on who should be high priest, because one of the zealots is the high priest right now and is refusing to change. But when Antiochus passes through, he gets a petition from the Hellenizers, who send him a letter and say, hey, listen, the current high priest is really against you. You should probably replace him and put someone else in place to govern Judea better. Okay, fair enough, Antiochus thinks. How about this guy that's in the middle party? He'll make a good high priest. That seems to work for like 2 days.
Great.
Until the Hellenizers send a new letter saying, no, we actually meant that you should make one of us the high priest. Sorry if we were unclear before. And Antiochus thinks, okay, so you want to be assimilated. You sure? Okay, fine, sure, I'll put a Hellenizing high priest. That works too. You guys do whatever. And as you can imagine, nobody is happy with this because it's all a mess.
Nobody liked that.
Yes, nobody likes this except the Hellenizers, but frankly, they're not powerful enough to hold on to this. And also, there's a wonderful line from 1st Maccabees, which talks about these Hellenizers. And Cyril, see if you can interpret what they mean, because I have no idea.
Okay.
Because 1 Maccabees says that the Hellenizers made foreskins for themselves to be more Hellenistic. How does that work?
I'm sorry.
Are they little hats? I don't know.
Oh my god. Did they like nick them? Like
I don't know.
Do you have like different colors?
It's just
or like
it's just a throwaway line. Do they have radical genetic therapy? I don't know. It's a thing
do they,
that
like,
is
it made of like animal skins, or is it just like more like a fabric that you wear? Like, is it fashion?
I don't know. I feel like, yes, there's different colors. There's a runway. It's great. It's fun times.
What is going on?
But yeah, that's. Please write in and tell us what in God's name is this meant to mean. So Antiochus leaves Jerusalem, heads towards the Egyptian border, and a couple of weeks after he leaves, the Zealots overthrow the Hellenizing high priest and replace their original high priest on the throne, I guess you would call it. So there is now a state of semi-civil war in Judea, and we have to deal with all of this. But Antiochus has no time to deal with all of this. He has more pressing issues, because in 170, at the Ptolemaic court, somebody had the bright idea of attacking the Seleucid Empire to retake Palestine. So we can just make sure that everything is there.
Hooray.
Yeah. But good news is that they weren't very secretive about it, and Antiochus knew with like a serious advance that this invasion was going to happen, so he managed to quickly rush all his troops to the border before the Ptolemies could even try anything. Then at the border, we have that there is a quick battle where Antiochus defeated the Ptolemaic army and managed to capture Pelusium, which was an important port city, which is essentially the entrance to all of Egypt. If you have Pelusium, you can just go in and out of Egypt without any trouble. So that's nice, but what is Antiochus to do now? Because his father, Antiochus the Great, decided to stop invading Egypt. Antiochus IV has now the opportunity to just flood in and take everything he wants. What do you think he does? Does he follow his father's example, or does he just march in and see what he can take?
I don't know him well enough to chime in here, but
he murdered a child.
That's
what you know so far.
I guess he will just go marching and, by force.
Yes, he does do this. He decides, you know what, I'm going to be the first Seleucid king in Egypt since Seleucus I. I'm going to just march in and take everything I can. So he crosses past Pelusium, invades the delta of the Nile, captures the old capital of Memphis, and begins to set his eyes on Alexandria. He is going to march on it and take it. When his large army arrives and surrounds Alexandria, he sends Jessica off to speak to Ptolemy VI and say, hey, that maybe there should be some sort of deal so that Ptolemy doesn't end up dethroned and dead, and Antiochus remains happy with what he's gained. Now, it looks like some sort of deal is organized, but we're not sure what the details are. The only thing that is certain is that we have now a three-way civil war in Egypt between Ptolemy VI, his sister wife Cleopatra II, and his brother Ptolemy VIII, who now also married Cleopatra. It's messy. So everything is slightly on fire.
Again.
Yep. And it's at this point, when Egypt is burning, that Antiochus gets news of the regime change in Jerusalem and the high priest being overthrown. So that's not great. Antiochus sort of sighs and heads back towards the east, mostly because he's concerned that this change in regime is being sponsored by the Ptolemies. He is suspecting that the Zealots are being sponsored by the Ptolemies to oppose the Seleucid regime in the area. Now, we have no evidence of this, but it's not unrealistic to expect that the Ptolemies would finance somebody to stab them in the back, so there we are. So Antiochus sends a small army to take Jerusalem, they loot the temple, and they reinstate their own high priest. Hooray, we've desecrated a temple.
Yay, we love that.
Good times.
Always goes well.
Yeah. So perfect, job done. Antiochus foresees no repercussions to this. Let's go look at the Ptolemies and how that's been going. He looks at the Ptolemies and sees that, okay, no, they're actually working together now. They've somehow figured out a deal, and they're now trying to take back their lands. That's annoying. Fine, Antiochus, let's go kick some more butt. So Antiochus sends quickly a fleet to take the only non-Egyptian territory that the Ptolemies still have, the island of Cyprus, which was an important naval base. And fortunately, Cyprus surrenders immediately. Antiochus has it. Great. Then, Antiochus goes with his army back to Memphis, where he didn't meet any resistance, and he issued coins in Memphis, displaying his victory, and also obtained the submission of all of Upper Egypt, which had recently revolted, had a native revolt, and now they're saying, yep, we're with you.
Oh, damn.
And it seems that he might have officially been crowned as pharaoh of all of Egypt. Which, it's not 100% certain, but it's a good story, so shut up.
We're going with it.
Yes, we're going with he is a pharaoh now. Great.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. There in Memphis, he receives a request for peace from the Ptolemies. And in this request for peace, he demands Cyprus, because it's a nice naval base. And he also demands Pelusium, which was this entry to Egypt. So what essentially means is that if he has Cyprus and Pelusium, he can just invade Egypt at will, and Egypt becomes de facto a vassal kingdom of his. So he can just invade whenever he wants. They have to do what he says, or they're screwed. But, unfortunately, the Ptolemies know that these terms mean that they basically stop being independent, so they just refuse, and they decide, okay, fine, we'll keep going with the war. So Antiochus takes his army from Memphis, takes his shiny new title pharaoh, and decides to conquer Alexandria with all of this. So he circles around Alexandria, besieges the city, and sits in for a bit of a wait to see when they'll surrender. And it's at this point that he stops at a town called Eleusis. There, he waits for the outcome of the siege.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, what's that on the horizon? There's a ship. Okay, that's a bit concerning. It might be reinforcements. Antiochus looks around, he tries to see if he recognizes the ship. Okay, seems unfamiliar, but let's see how many more appear and how much we should be worried. Then he waits a while more. No, looks like it's just one ship. It's a single ship. That's weird. Don't they know there's a siege on? We've had a blockade and everything. What are they doing? Then it gets closer, and he sees, okay, they're flying a Roman banner. What do they want? Oh, crap, I didn't give my firstborn son to the Romans. Are they here to ask for my firstborn son?
Oh, yeah, we did this, way before.
Yeah.
That pact with the Roman devil.
Exactly. But okay, so this tiny Roman ship arrives and docks at Eleusis, and out comes a little old man.
Oh?
This little old man is a senator called Popilius Laenas. And actually, this is great news, because Antiochus knew Laenas from the time he was a hostage in Rome.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, that's nice. Are they here to congratulate me on the thing? Is it going to be like an extra treaty of friendship and alliance? What do they want? Do they want to split up Egypt? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And so Antiochus goes over to Popilius and goes in to shake his hand and welcome him, but Popilius stops him.
Oh.
He says, "No, Antiochus, I'm sorry."
Too slow. Sorry.
Maybe that's the unwritten version. Unfortunately, Polybius doesn't give us that, but he does tell us that Lena says, no, I'm sorry, Antiochus, but I can't shake your hand until I know we can be friends.
That's fair. Okay.
Okay, fair enough. Why shouldn't we be friends, Lenus? And he hands Antiochus a scroll from the Senate and people of Rome. In the scroll, it says, Antiochus should abandon all of his conquests in Ptolemaic lands and make peace with Ptolemy for no gain. If he does not, this will be a declaration of war on the Roman Republic.
Uh-huh.
So that's not great.
I feel like their definition of friendship is questionable.
Yeah, these are the Romans we're talking about. They take our firstborn sons and this is their friendship. It's not great. Okay, so Antiochus is slightly shocked at this news and he thinks, okay, this is a difficult choice.
Because I don't want to do that, you know.
I'm going to go talk with my council a moment and see if we can come to some sort of agreement. And then I'll give you your answer, Popilius. You can just, enjoy yourself in the camp and then I'll be right back. It's at this point that Popilius Laenas does the most Roman thing ever done.
Oh.
Yes, he takes a stick and draws a circle around the great king Antiochus IV, son of Antiochus the Great.
How dare you?
And says, no consulting the council. If you leave the circle without giving me an answer, we're at war.
What the? How dare he? Excuse me?
Exactly.
Who are you to do that to the king?
So this is what is known as the Day of Eleusis. Because it's a very scene.
I swear. I do not have the patience for these Romans. I do not.
Yeah. So what do you think Antiochus does? Does he give in? Or does he try to fight for it?
Wait, and Antiochus was pro-Rome-ish,
yeah,
right?
He was.
So this really came to bite him in the rear.
Yeah, because apparently Ptolemy had sent a little letter off to Rome.
Yeah.
And, well, the Romans don't really want the Seleucid Empire to own the Eastern Mediterranean.
Yeah, I guess he gives in? I don't know. This is so disrespectful. I'd just go to war.
Yes, in your version, you go to war with the Romans and decide to stab them.
I don't know if that would be wise. I don't know if we could make it, because last time they kicked us. But, how dare they?
Yeah, basically. That is the good vibe. But, well, as you imagined, Antiochus, in this circle in the sand,
contemplates his life choices.
Just sighs and says, okay, fine. You win. And then Popilius says, shakes his hand and says, good, I'm so glad
now.
We're friends. Like, you little piece of Although I love that Diodorus Siculus adds that Antiochus gave in, and I quote, awed by the majesty and might of Rome. Which, come on.
By drawing a circle in the sand and being like, no.
Yeah.
If you leave, I'm just going to declare war on you.
Yeah.
And you're like, seriously? This is how we're making important decisions right now? Like.
Yeah. And, why did he actually give in?
Yeah, I'm impressed that, we know about this. Because I would be so mortified that I did this. That I wouldn't let any historian know.
I mean, we know about it because the Romans are telling us. Yeah, this is the
kill
Romans
every
being
witness.
Look at us. Yes. It's like that Korean king who just fell off his horse and said, nobody tell the historian, and the historian wrote it down in his history. It's good stuff.
Yes. But come on.
But yeah, so essentially, why is this happening? Well, first of all, there are some modern historians who propose that actually this was all decided beforehand, but I seriously doubt this.
Nah.
Because according to their point of view, they're saying, Antiochus knew that he couldn't really hold Egypt, So it was better to just make a nice little theater scene where, oh, the Romans look like the bad guys, and oh, it's not that he didn't take Egypt because he can't, he didn't take it just because, oh, it's the evil Romans doing this.
Bruh.
Which, I can see your point, but...
How is this less pathetic?
Yeah,
like, how does this solve anything?
Yeah, this is just so humiliating that you can't just, you just had this war for nothing and you've been immensely humiliated. I don't see this being something you've agreed on beforehand. But, yeah, the reason is that probably it's kind of a mess for Antiochus to deal with a war against Egypt and Rome at the same time. Because, sure, he took some of Egypt, but then there's a whole native population he has to deal with. So how does he deal with the local population of Egypt? Are they going to welcome him? Are they not when his army leaves? How are the Romans going to attack? How is all that going to work out?
Yeah.
And also, if you remember, the Romans have Demetrius as a hostage.
Yep. We did that.
And if we're going according to the direct line of succession, Demetrius is more legitimate than Antiochus IV as king. So what the Romans could do is just release Demetrius with a bunch of money and an army.
Be free into the wild. Just frolic around.
And if Demetrius is there, then Antiochus would have to deal with a civil war, a war with Egypt, a war with Rome, all at the same time. So rather than doing all that and risk losing his entire throne, he decides, fine, it's immensely humiliating, but sure, I guess it's better than being executed by my nephew.
I guess.
So, it's still very humiliating, and it's sort of the epitome of this period of Roman history, where they consider themselves the rulers of the Mediterranean, and they just tell kings what to do in this embarrassing way. Like, Popilius Laenas isn't even a consul or anything, he's just some guy that the Senate sent, because why not?
Just some dude.
So, after this pleasant meeting, Antiochus is forced to leave Egypt and march back, taking away all his garrisons, renouncing his title as pharaoh, and going home. But great news! We get to pass through Jerusalem and see how everything is going.
Oh, I'm sure it's going great.
So the Hellenizing high priest, who is now currently in charge in Jerusalem, asks Antiochus, hey, we've been dealing with some zealot rebels. What do you think if we convert our great temple into a temple to Zeus? You know, it's a thing with syncretism in Hellenistic places. You know, they have Zeus Ammon in Egypt. Zeus is a sky father. Our god is sort of a sky father. We can just make it a temple of Zeus Yahweh. How does that sound, Antiochus? And Antiochus says, okay, sure. I mean, I guess I was going to settle some people from Syria here anyway to secure my control. I guess this gives them a place to worship. Nice. Are you sure your people aren't going to be mad about it? No, it'll be fine. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about a thing.
It is at this point that a man called Judah Maccabee, who is sort of the chief of the Zealots, quite rightly thinks, what do you mean you want to worship Zeus in our temple? We have like a whole 10-step program. 3 of the 10 steps are about which god we worship. Was that unclear? What are you doing?
That is so true. I love it. Just like, listen. We don't do none of that nonsense of like, oh yeah, we'll share gods. Have you not been paying attention?
Yes, our religion is very specific about this thing. We have a whole story about Moses and everything. God curses people terribly when they worship other gods. What are you doing? You absolute madman. Why are you the high priest? And so Judah Maccabee and his zealot friends decide to start a whole guerrilla campaign to try and retake Jerusalem and fight off the invaders. And this is where the rebellion that Hanukkah is about starts.
I see.
Yes. And you know who loses from all of this? The people who lose are the members of the just please don't burn my farm party, because they're caught in the middle. Because Judah Maccabee will go and burn their farms because, well, they're supplying food to the cities where the Hellenizers are. The Hellenizers will burn the villages because they're probably supporting the guerrilla warfare. And if you're just trying to support your family, you're kind of screwed because, I don't know, man.
I just want to feed my children. What is wrong with you guys?
Also, seeing this rebellion, Antiochus forbids observation of Jewish law on pain of death, according to the Bible. And it's interesting to note that this isn't across the whole empire. Like, the Jews in Babylon are perfectly fine continuing their observation. It seems like it's more of a localized thing in Judea specifically to support his candidate for high priest so that they can have the whole foreskin hats and whatever they're planning.
Why would you keep bringing it up? Please, release me.
But now Antiochus returns to Syria. He leaves this problem behind. Some underling can deal with it. It's not important enough for him to care.
I see.
So he arrives off to Antioch, and he decides, well, he grew up in Rome. How do Romans celebrate victories, Serial?
Oh, they have triumphs.
Yes, and Antiochus would very much like his own triumph.
Of course he would. He wants to be Roman so bad. You
don't know the half of it. You'll see now what his triumph is like.
This traitor. How dare he?
So, in this great triumph, he dresses up like a Roman. He has elections for consul, which he wins. For some reason. Of course.
Because,
He arms and commands soldiers to act like Roman soldiers and has them parade across the streets of Antioch. And then he assumes the epithet of Epiphanes, the manifest god, after his great victory.
What victory? Are you delusional? What is going on?
I guess he's trying to spin it as, oh yeah, we left because we were winning so hard. We didn't want the Ptolemies to feel bad for themselves. So, we really won. I mean, I have coins that say I'm Pharaoh, but, we just left it because we felt bad humiliating them that much.
Sure. Yeah, we're gonna go with that. Definitely the truth. 1,000%.
Yeah, although the Epiphanes nickname would eventually be deformed by his enemies into Epimanes. Can you guess what that means, Serial?
No.
The Manes is the same one from Maniac. So it is basically Antiochus the Madman.
Yeah, I mean, I have called him delusional just now, so I can see it.
Everybody else agrees. Also, just for some good old Roman entertainment, he decides to organize gladiatorial games in the city. So he's trying to spend as much as possible for all of this to try and show that even though he was politically outmaneuvered by the Romans, he is still militarily and economically just as powerful as anyone else.
Sure.
So at least the people in the capital can see this as a victory, although the news is a bit weird. But, yeah. So you notice that Antiochus is acting a little bit strange, and, well, we have these stories.
Oh.
Because some hypotheses are that maybe he just sort of had a nervous breakdown after the whole circle drawn around him incident.
I do not blame him, honestly.
Just like, so that might be the case. Otherwise, he maybe was just a little bit weird and he had enemies writing his histories, so that sort of messed up. But Diodorus tells us that Antiochus would often slip out of the palace with a few friends at night and travel around the city unknown, incognito, which is very Nero of him. Also, apparently he enjoyed just showing up at random parties in disguise and then just suddenly revealing himself to freak out the guests who just had the king appear in the middle of their random party, which sounds like a great fun prank. But also, don't you have a kingdom to run, my dude? A nice thing is that he took interest in metallurgy, he had hobbies, and he enjoyed discussing technical matters with goldsmiths and silversmiths in their shops. He'd just go up to a shop and say, oh yeah, but what exactly are you doing to the forge? Like, what heat are you using? What soldering method? And that seemed to be very peaceful. And it also seems like he was a serious micromanager, because during the organization of his triumph, he just rolled around on a sad old horse, micromanaging everybody's work. Like, he'd stop saying, like, no, actually the banners, they should be a bit more flappy, make them a little bit longer. It's like, no, actually this armor isn't exactly correct. And, no, I want this specific gladiator. So, the worst boss, but, Also, he apparently attended drinking parties, and instead of just being like the king still in a certain place, having others approach him, he just went around to the different groups in the party to chat with them.
Mm-hmm.
Which Diodorus makes it sound very scandalous, but he just seems kind of nice. Seems like he just is more down to earth. And also, he spent like 13 years in Rome not being raised as a prince. It makes sense that he would be a little bit less formal than somebody who had been raised since birth to be king. And yeah, then we get some slightly more Nero-y or Caligula-y or Commodus-y. Or
yeah, the fun ones.
Yeah.
The completely not unhinged, very calm and collected bunch.
Yes. Apparently, again, according to Diodorus, and I'm not sure I believe this, he once made an entrance into a party carried by a bunch of mimes.
Uh-huh.
And then was revealed to be stark naked underneath his coverings, and proceeded to perform obscene dances that made everybody quickly leave out of embarrassment.
Oh, God.
So that's a thing. Also, Polybius tells us a story of when Antiochus went to the baths with the common people. And apparently in the baths, Antiochus, since he was rich, he's the king, he tended to be covered in expensive ointments and perfumes once he was done with the bathing, when he was being massaged and all that. And at that point, one of the common people around said, "Oh, how lucky kings are that they can smell so sweet. How fortunate you are, your majesty." So apparently the next day, Antiochus brought a huge jar of the most precious perfume he could find and poured it all over this guy's head, so that everybody in the baths suddenly jumped up and rolled around on the floor around this guy to cover themselves in the perfume, causing great amusement to everyone involved. Also, Polybius adds that he would generally just give people random gifts of money, dates, and sometimes gazelles' knuckle bones for reasons, I assume.
Yep.
Maybe to use as dice, I don't know. It's why gazelles, though. So now it's probable that most of this is Roman exaggeration because it fits the typical idea of the corrupt Eastern king and, oh no, they're scary because they're foreign. And it's kind of weird also because Antiochus would have grown up in Rome, and if he learned anything, he learned it from them. And so these are probably just exaggerations from Antiochus being just more down to earth since he grew up in Rome and without an especially privileged position and was just more accustomed to going to talk to people as normal. But yeah, so while all this triumph is going on, it seems like in Judea the war is turning towards the rebels' side. They defeat the local governor a couple of times, but Antiochus is busy. He has other things to do. Let's go. So Antiochus begins to prepare an expedition to the east, because if you remember, after Antiochus the Great died, the east was sort of weird and unstable, and a lot of the treaties didn't apply anymore, so it was breaking away, as it did somehow. And so Antiochus decides to prepare some sort of expedition to deal with all these situations. Unfortunately, due to the sources, we don't really know how extensive his preparations were and what the main goal was. It's possible that he was just trying to deal with the Parthians who had a new king called Mithridates I, and who was making some trouble in the east and was looking a little bit threatening, so maybe Antiochus wanted to nip that in the bud before anything unfortunate happened. But anyway, we're not sure about the size, but we know that Antiochus prepares an army and gets ready to march to the east. And as is traditional, since he's at least somewhat clever, he made his son, Antiochus V, co-king, and left him in Antioch in case anything were to happen. So, good news. But since Antiochus V is still very young, he was left under the control of a regent called Lysias, which you might want to remember.
Okay.
Who is basically the one officially running the western part of the empire while Antiochus is off on an expedition. So what happened? Antiochus first starts off and heads to Armenia and reconquers it. Basically makes its local king a vassal. Since Armenia had broken away after Antiochus III's reign, he makes sure that at least they're paying some sort of tribute. So, nice. Later on, he passes through Babylon and he refounds a few cities in Iran and renames Ecbatana as Epiphania after himself. But don't worry, the name won't stick. Everybody will continue calling it Ecbatana because we've been here for 1,000 years. What are you doing? Then, marching further east, Antiochus seems to have attacked some local Persian ruler in Persia proper and defeated them, established some better local control over the region, making sure that they're subjects as you'd expect. Then he arrived to Elymais, where his father had died, and he decided to imitate him by taking the treasure from the local temple. But, fortunately, unlike his father, once our Antiochus saw that an angry mob was forming around the temple, seeing, wait, why are you taking the stuff from our temple? Our Antiochus decided that maybe he was going to back away and not do this, because he'd really rather not get murdered in the same way as his father.
Smart.
So we've learned one thing at least.
We learn from our mistakes. I am so impressed.
Good stuff here.
From some mistakes.
At least one thing was learned.
Yeah.
So based on the battles with the Persians, it does look like Persia proper is sort of slipping out of Seleucid control. Like, it doesn't have a big, powerful king like Bactria and Parthia further in the east, but it seems to be independent-minded enough that battles were necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it looks like the empire was holding together well enough, because it looks like Antiochus did what he could to found new cities, mostly in Syria and Palestine, both as a defense in case of a Ptolemaic counterattack and also to ensure the Hellenization of the local population. We've been there in Judea when everybody was arguing because there were new colonists. Well, these new colonists. Also, unlike the earlier Seleucids, it looks like our Antiochus isn't really making new cities. It looks like he's just renaming old cities and reorganizing them and bringing in new people from abroad.
Okay,
just to restructure them and make sure they work well. Also, he's pretty good in the administration in that he makes these new cities pay him for the privilege of printing smaller copper and bronze coins.
Mm-hmm.
So he can make a profit from this. And this also helps, day-to-day trade where you don't have to go around with a massive banknote to buy a loaf of bread. You actually have small enough denominations that you can buy everyday things. And this is pretty nice. Although it looks like this only happened in the West, where a lot of the mints were. In the East, it looked like either things were a bit too unstable or they didn't really need such small denominations and they were fine with the old system. Whatever it was, mostly in the West. Another thing that was only in the West is that he's the first Seleucid king to be called a god on his coins.
Oh, right.
But only on these smaller coins. So while Antiochus the second was called a god, but in like this one very specific city in Anatolia.
I remember that.
Antiochus IV is called a god everywhere. He's like, hello, I am a god. Thank you very much. So the state of the empire is relatively stable, although, it has been healthier, but it's doing better than it was before, somewhat. But how will it fare after Antiochus' eastern expedition? Well, let's see. Because when Antiochus heads east, he starts to get a little bit sick.
Oh no.
He gets more sick.
Yeah, we know how this goes.
And unfortunately for him, he eventually becomes so sick that he calls to his bedside one of the commanders of the army on his expedition, a man called Philip, who you'll like to mark down.
Oh.
And Antiochus gives Philip his ring. We don't know if there are any words with it, but he definitely assigns Philip his ring. And then shortly after, Antiochus dies. Now, can you think of a problem with having a regent in Antioch with King Antiochus V and Philip being given the ring of the king on his deathbed in charge of an army?
I can see the gladiator problem.
Yeah, that could be it, yes.
It's exactly that. Except...
Yes, fair. He needs to make the Seleucid Empire a republic again, that sort of
thing.
thing.
The regent is not Commodus. But essentially, you have someone who can claim, I've been chosen to be the heir.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not necessarily, properly on paper, but when you have an army, who cares?
Yeah, you can do what you want. Your army is your right to rule.
Exactly.
So we'll see next episode how that works out and how we have a new child king, Antiochus V.
Oh.
He's like 10, 12 or something. He's slightly older than Antiochus the child, his half-brother. But we'll see how that works out next time.
Oh, damn.
Oh, and also, just so you know, we have a great bit of almost certainly not true detail from 2nd Maccabees, where the Jewish people are writing again about Antiochus' death.
Oh, great.
Because they enjoy the morbid details right now.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, according to them, Antiochus was struck with a bowel disease as soon as he heard that the Jews had won a great victory.
He himself to death.
Pretty much. But no, it gets worse. Because
God.
In this case of bowel discomfort, he orders his chariot to speed off to Jerusalem to try and defeat them. But once he hears this, he falls off and breaks all of his bones.
All
falling
of
off
them?
the back of the chariot.
All 206?
All of his bones.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, even mini pinky bones. Everything is broken. Then, in his broken state, his body starts to be swarmed by maggots, and his flesh begins to rot away, all while he is still living. And then finally, Antiochus accepts to make a peace with the Jewish people, and that is when God finally allows him to die.
Unbelievable.
The end. So there we go. That is the great life and gruesome potential death of Antiochus IV.
Huh.
What are your thoughts, Ariel?
Boy, sure lots happened.
Yeah. There's a lot of business going on. A lot of nice scenes that I enjoy. But yeah, it's definitely been an event.
Oh, that was fun. Damn.
Yep. So, are you ready to rate this man?
Yeah.
And see how he does? I have high hopes for his ratings. We'll see how they go. Okay, so our first category is final moments. How good was his death? Either dying of disease and handing over a ring to his general, or having a disease, falling off a chariot, breaking all his bones, being swarmed by maggots, flesh rotting off, and then being finally allowed to die by God.
I mean, that is very epic. I do not think that's what happened, but that is very epic.
Almost certainly not, but it's
Vengeful God.
It's a good story. This is Old Testament God, you see.
Yeah.
He still hasn't gone through the whole peace and love phase.
That's true.
It's the whole fire and brimstone, I will raze your cities to the ground.
Yeah.
Genocide the people who threaten me.
Truly, I recently rewatched Prince of Egypt, which, was a good way
this is
to
the same one, yeah.
dust off the old Moses story. And boy, is that questionable.
God does not mess around. God will mess you up.
Yep. It's like, you have to stop mistreating and enslaving my people. Okay, so what would you do if I don't? Oh, I will do the same thing. I will just genocide your people instead. Ah, I see. you know.
That's fine.
An eye for an eye.
Thank you. Message received.
Uh-huh. Intense.
So yeah, we get a bit of divine retribution. Hooray. So how highly do you rate this divine retribution / mundane disease, maybe malaria?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Mundane disease is like, not that cool, but like it deserves some points for the extra.
Yeah. I also like the chaos element of giving the ring on your deathbed to somebody entirely unrelated. Like, you had a succession plan in order. You should have
I
just
wonder
not.
if that happened or if the guy just took it.
It could have not.
Because, like, why would you do that?
I mean, maybe they're feverish or like, wait, did I actually appoint a regent? I better appoint a regent in case something goes wrong.
Oh, maybe.
It could be. Who knows? It might just be Philip saying, oh, no, the king totally gave me his ring. I didn't take it off his corpse.
The ring still has the finger hanging on it.
Yes, pay no attention to the finger attached to the ring. Yeah, so I'm impressed. I like it. I like that there's the story. I like that there's the chaos. I'm aiming for a 6. That's my starting point. Let me see if I want to shift up or down. What are you thinking, Serial?
Yeah.
Let me see. Who did I give a 6 to? Just a comparison. Darius III or Artaxerxes III, which are also murderies. I think this is worth a 6. I like the Maccabees story of the horrible, horrible death. Like, who is it? Galerius, who also dies that way? But anyway. So yeah, I'm sticking with 6. How about you, Serial?
Yeah, no, actually, I think a 6 is pretty good.
Nice. So with a 6 and a 6, we get a 6 out of 10 for final moments. Next category is battle hardness. How good was he at wars and fighting? He was pretty good. Like, he wasn't terrible. Okay, so let's go through his resume. So he started by taking the throne with a Pergamene army, marching on Antioch. He didn't really do any fighting. The army was just big enough that Antioch surrendered, so...
Yeah. But that's also good strategy, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. He then had his whole war with Egypt, which he won brilliantly. Like, militarily, he was undefeated. He managed to just go through Egypt, take Memphis, take the Delta, defeat Ptolemaic armies, besiege Alexandria. He didn't gain anything from it, but militarily, he was winning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to put down any points for the fact that at the threat of having to fight with Rome, he folded. Don't know if that's a thing. And then another part of his career is that after the first time his high priest in Jerusalem was replaced, he sent an army which retook Jerusalem and replaced his guy in charge. So that's one victory, but then some of his generals lost in Judea while he was off in the east, so that's not great. But then he managed to retake Armenia, make Armenia become a subject again. He also won a couple of battles in Persia, so that's good. So overall, I think it's a solid career.
Solid record, yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering how high to go for it, because it's a solid record without anything incredible. Like, it's fine. I'm wondering if to also go with a 6 here, or I think I'm a 6 or a 5, because I think it's good, but I don't know how good. Like, Xerxes the First got a 6, Cambyses the Second got a 6, Antiochus the First got a 6, at least for me. But I don't know if it's a 5 or 6. What are your orientation?
It wasn't bad. Yeah, I feel like a 6, like slightly above. Well, I will take a point down for just being a suck up to Rome.
That's fair.
So a 5.
Yeah. I'll stick with my 6, because I feel like it's okay. They didn't actually fight. We don't know who would have won. I mean, we maybe know who would have won, but who knows? So, yeah, I think 6 and a 5 is a fair deal. So 6 and a 5 gives us an 11 out of 20 for battle hardness. Next category is scheminess. How good was he at plots and manipulation? Okay, there's something here. He managed to, convince the king of Pergamon to lend him an army to take over the empire. So that's nice. He managed to manipulate his way to becoming king and not just regent, and then get rid of the uncomfortable child. Negative scheminess, he got entirely diplomatically outmaneuvered by the Romans, like in the most egregious and humiliating way possible. And otherwise, schemy, what did he do? Doesn't seem terribly schemy. It seems like it's mostly getting to the throne, which requires some schemes. Once he's on it, he doesn't really bother too much with that sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to give maybe like a token half point or something for the whole triumph and the propaganda campaign.
Honestly, yeah, that's kind
of
of
trying to make himself look like a victor. This is still schemy, though.
Yeah. That's scheminess.
Yeah.
That's not really. He wasn't very schemy. He actually got humiliated by Rome in that sense.
Yeah.
And like not much happened apart from, killing child Antiochus and
Yeah, I think that deserves like 1 or 2 points. I'm
putting himself on the throne, right?
Everything
like,
together.
It's what I mean, but like I don't think he was particularly
it's not huge. It's not Darius the Great or anything.
No.
But, I think it's worth some points. I think I'm going to go with 2, which is fair enough. How about you?
Yeah.
You're sticking with 2 as well?
Yeah, there's no reason to go higher than that. So
okay, fair enough.
A 2 feels correct.
Yeah, so with a 2 and a 2, he gets a 4 out of 20 for scheminess. Next category is shock factor, which is probably where he'll shine. Because how scandalous was he? Well, he has a lot of things. First of all, he usurps the throne. Well, he marries his sister. He kills his stepson/nephew. He folds to Rome in the most humiliating way possible.
Yeah, what was that?
he just accepts to be treated that way, which I understand there's political reasons for it, but also, come on, my man. How is this happening? Then shock factor, he sort of is okay with when the Hellenizing high priest says, can we turn it into a temple to Zeus? He's like, yeah, sure. Sounds fair. He forbids the observation of Jewish law in all of Judea to try and help this civil war that's brewing. He does all the weird triumph thing. He dresses up as a Roman. He has elections that he wins. He has gladiatorial games. He has soldiers dressed up as Romans.
That's just pitiful.
Yeah. Then, well, we have other stories. He's also not one for protocol. He sort of shows up randomly at people's parties. He just goes around and talks with everybody. He apparently entered a party naked and performed obscene dances. That's a thing, apparently.
Very normal. Typical behavior.
Yeah, he goes to the baths and pours perfume on one guy and just everybody rolls around in it. That's a thing he does too. And shocking, he also just gives his ring to a random guy, even though he already had a regent, and this is going to cause problems down the line. So I think it's a healthy amount of shock factor. I'm pretty impressed. I'm wondering, I need to count in my head what it is. So I'd say like 3 points for the killing stepson and marrying sister.
I mean, that's not very shocking, though. Others have done the same.
I mean, I would have given it more, but I feel like, it's not great. I'm adding the usurpation into that. Then I'd say a couple points for the humiliation at the hands of Rome, because, come on, I'm going to say 3, actually, because it's a big humiliation.
Yeah.
It's a couple more points for the treatment of the Jewish people, just in general. And another couple for the triumph, honestly. I think I'm...
Yeah, that was just, like, shocking and disappointing.
There's a lot of good things in here, yeah.
I cannot believe.
Traitor.
Yeah.
So I think an 8, actually. I'm convinced with my calculation. He's one of the more shocking kings we've had so far. Like, the previous king that was more than 8 shocking was Alexander the Great, of course.
Yeah.
And then Cambyses only got a 9, so I think he's welcome in this club. It's a pretty outrageous dude. So I'm going to go with an 8. How about you, Serial?
I'll go with a 7. That's not,
okay, fair enough. So with an 8 and a 7, we get a 15 out of 20 for shock factor. Next category is Aaron Shine. How good was he for the Empire in general and Iran in particular?
Not terrible,
he has merits
but
and demerits, yeah. So on the upside, he refounded some cities to try and better settle the empire, ensure that it was more homogeneous. So that's nice. He introduced this new monetary policy, which made trade easier in the western of the empire. He stabilized the eastern part by winning a few battles, consolidating a bit of the areas that were breaking away. Persia in particular, he does bring back into the fold more securely. So that's positive, I'd say, overall. Then come the negatives.
Yeah, then,
because, he basically kicks a hornet's nest in Palestine with everybody getting angry at him for different reasons. And, oh, yes, let's worship Zeus in the temple. Oh, yes, let's outlaw. Yeah, I don't know, man. So that's not great for stability. Also, he messes up the succession at the last moment, so that's not great. Like, he had a plan to start with.
When I said before, rule number 1, to not mess up the empire, appoint a successor.
Yeah.
I didn't mean, like, do it over and over again and then not clarify. That's the wrong way to do it.
Bit problematic there, isn't it? Does that, and then we have the big one that's staring us in the face is he tries to conquer Egypt, fails miserably, gains nothing from this war, wastes all the resources on it, and then just looks like Rome's lapdog.
Yeah.
Because, Rome can just send one old man and you have to withdraw your armies and give up all your conquests, and you're not even going to dispute that. You're just going to say, yep, okay, yes, it's fine. Thank you, Rome. May I have another, please? It's
pathetic.
It's not great for our image. So, yeah, I think those are the main. I don't know if anything else stood up particularly to you, but this is
that's a pretty good summary.
Issue. So, I think the Empire is worse off. Like, if it weren't for the whole Roman Egypt thing, I would have gone for like a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
But I think it's just so bad. Just so humiliating and so destructive. Like, because it's basically showing that the Seleucids can't have an independent foreign policy anymore. They just need to ask Rome for permission first. And then if Rome says yes, okay, fine. But, like, come on. This is really embarrassing. So, yeah, I think a 4, because the Empire is worse off. Like, it's not crumbling, but it's worse off in general.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I think that otherwise he would have done a reasonably good job, but this is just too big to ignore. So, I'm going for a 4.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I agree with you.
4 as well? Okay, very nice. So with a 4 and a 4, we get an 8 out of 20 for Aaron Shine. Next category is Face of Faces. How interesting was this man's face? So Serial, please choose your favorite scene from our dedicated selection to draw this man.
All right, let me... yeah, of course. I was like, what am I going to choose? But I know, already. Of course I know.
Okay, very good. Okay, so Serial has finished their drawing, so let me pick it up and I'll describe it to you lovely folks. Okay, so let me open it. Yes, of course!
Of course!
You chose the correct scene.
Are you kidding?
Okay, I love it. Yes, I'm very happy. Okay, so listeners, what we have here is Antiochus in some nice robes, a diadem as usual, fluffy hair, and he is in the middle of a circle, and we see from his back an old Roman man holding up a stick in his hand, and we see Antiochus staring at him with his hands out, so as to say, "What? What? What?"
Going to make him do the Italian hand, which would have, obviously he's not Italian or Roman, but he wants to be really badly, so maybe it would have been, But I think this conveys it well enough.
Yes. There is just a ... over his head, just to represent how he feels about the whole ordeal, which, fair enough. So, very good. I love this. Extremely strong vibes. But now let me show you what he looks like, and we have a bust. Here is the man. What do you think of him?
Oh, nice. Missing a nose. Very typical.
Yeah, tragic.
Interesting face. We're going back to the wide, very square, rectangular kind of face with a wide jaw. And sunken eyes are still a thing, but this might also just be the stylization of the statue to give it that kind of Greek profile where the bridge of the nose and the eyebrow bone don't really have a dip in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he has short curly hair and the diadem. I feel like I could relate it to the coins that we've seen before.
Yeah, you can see some family resemblance, although there isn't anything that's
he's a much
notable.
Stolkier, the kind of build that we've had before of stout features.
Yeah, the more traditional Macedonian features.
Yeah. Compared to the other bust that we've seen that was...
Yeah, Antiochus the Great.
Yes.
Was a lot more lithe.
It was less stylized, so it was more human looking, but also Antiochus the Great had much more angular features to him.
Yes, he was
thinner face,
sharper,
sunken cheeks and such. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not terribly impressed. I think it's fine, honestly. I was thinking about a 4. Mostly because there's nothing that just makes it pop. It's nice that we get a bust. Okay, cool. But there's nothing that makes me, oh yes, I definitely remember this face. It's iconic. It just seems like a guy. So, yeah. I think I'm going for... I don't know if to go for... No, a 3 sounds harsh because we have a bust and coins, but I think a 4 is what I'm going to aim for. How about you, Serial?
Actually, I think a 4 is pretty good. I like that it is contemporary, right?
It is.
Yeah.
So,
it's damaged, but that gives it a bit of personality. I like it. Yeah, I think a 4 is fine.
Okay, fair. So with a 4 and a 4, he gets a 2 out of 5 for Face of Faces. Next category is lengthiness. How long do you think this man reigned?
Boy, was I not paying attention to any of the dates.
I don't think I gave many anyway, but yeah. What is the feeling? How long does it feel?
Well, he's had a child, which he had already after starting reigning.
True.
And you mentioned that this boy is like about 12?
Thereabouts.
So...
I mean, 12 is a bit old, but
10,
probably
10
younger,
12, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, yeah, maybe 11 years.
12 years.
Well, I was going to say, but, you know.
Close enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, from 175 to 163 BC, that gives him a total of 12 years, which, dividing by 10, gives us a 1.2 out of 5 for lengthiness. Which brings us to the total score of 47.2 out of 100 points, which places him between Xerxes I and Antiochus I. So it's an honorable number of points, mostly due to all the scandal. But, you know, I think it's pretty significant. No, wait, he has he has 47.2, which puts him just 0.1 above Xerxes I and below Cyrus II. Cyrus the Great, of course.
Interesting.
So he's just barely above Xerxes. If he just was a tiny bit less scandalous, he would have not made it. But there we are. So, interesting results. But we have a final question we need to discuss. Is he shocking enough, scandalous enough, humiliated enough, and potential enough to be a Shahanshah? Or is he just a Shahanah?
It's interesting.
I think there's something there.
I'm actually, I'm not... I do have to think about it. Other times I'm just like, no, this is, no way. We have it very clear. This, I could see the argument for it.
I think I'm more on the pro side. I'm willing to be persuaded.
I think am that just so bewildered
the Day of Eleusis is
by
just
how
so
pathetic
incredible.
This man is.
I know, that's so
I am so
amazing.
bewildered by how he sold himself to the Romans and how this just, breaks my heart. I cannot.
I know. I think that scene is just so huge that it's just wow. I definitely remember him.
I know. For all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, but before redoing the episodes, I didn't remember Antiochus II or Seleucus IV, but him, I was like, oh yes, I'm looking forward to this episode. It's I know this guy, he has this good scene.
Listen, does this mean he would get to talk with Antiochus the Great?
Yes, he would. Gets to go talk to Dad about what happened.
God. Dad, you know the Romans that essentially wrecked the empire and you were doing so amazing and then they terribly defeated you and how you never recovered from that? I like those guys. I wish we were more like them.
I am the Seleucid version of a Romaboo.
You know what? Only to make this happen and to have this headcanon of this reunion and just to have Antiochus the Great absolutely be disappointed in his son. I want to.
Fair.
I will give it the Shahanshah.
Okay, let's go for it. I'm ready.
I cannot believe that I've done this, but I've done this. So
congratulations, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. You are a Shahanshah and can go join your father, Antiochus the Great, in the Paradise Gardens and explain to him exactly why you sold yourself out to the Romans when everything your father did was to try and not do that.
Right.
But hey, at least you weren't murdered the same way as your father, so congratulations on that.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so that leads us to the end of our episode. Thank you for listening. We hope you had fun with another Shahanshah. Hooray, after so few episodes. We're spoiling you.
You can thank us by leaving a review and telling us, in your podcast.
Please do. We love receiving reviews. They make people know that we exist, and it's nice to hear from you, because why not? And yeah, so if you want to find out what happens with the Tale of Two Regions, join us next week with Antiochus V and figure out how long does he last? Does he get caught in the crossfire? Who knows? Is the Roman Senate going to mess things up again?
God, of course
Feel free to find out in the next episodes, because, well, Rome will never stop being a pain in our necks until the end of at least this season. So we'll see how that goes. So thank you for listening. We hope you have a nice week, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.